hello there, and thank you for joining me for this week's edition of Telile 24/7. I'm your host, Adam Cook, and we have a busy show for you this week. In just a few moments' time, you're going to see the new designs for the Port Hastings roundabout project, and you'll hear from members of Nova Scotia's Department of Public Works, as well as the MLA for Port Hastings and Inverness County, about why these design plans are laid out the way they are, and what motorists can expect once they're completed in nearly 2 years' time. You're also going to hear from a member of the Ecology Action Centre about why the recent boom in green hydrogen in the Strait area and across Nova Scotia could be concerning to her colleagues, and Nova Scotia residents. And we'll have some highlights from Richmond Municipal Council's latest meeting of Committee of the Whole, including a special look at some Christmas events that have been happening throughout the county. But we begin this week with an update from Dr. Robert Strang, Nova Scotia's Chief Medical Officer of Health. On December 15th, we were invited to take part in a teleconference involving Dr. Strang, in which he presented several updates on respiratory viruses that are making their way through Nova Scotia. So, as a public service to our Telile viewers, we have that particular media availability with Dr. Strang in its entirety. In just a couple of moments' time, you're going to hear Dr. Strang's opening remarks about respiratory viruses and how they're sweeping through our province. And I was also able to get in a couple of questions on behalf of Telile Community Television. You'll hear Dr. Strang's answers momentarily. Right now, let's hear opening remarks about the current state of respiratory viruses in Nova Scotia from Nova Scotia's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Robert Strang.
With the holiday season upon us, I'm sure many people have already participated in holiday gatherings and events, and likely have some upcoming between now and the new year. And certainly getting together with loved ones, friends, and coworkers is part of this time of year. And people are excited about that, especially after 2 holiday seasons that certainly weren't what we would call normal by any means. However, even this year is different. Normally we don't have peak influenza until after really to the end of the holiday season into January and February. But this year, as holiday season is upon us, we have lots of social opportunities. We also have right in the middle of peak influenza. So that means there's a lot of, if we're not careful, there's a lot of potential for passing viruses around as we socialize, which is not so much the norm in typical years. So I'm asking Nova Scotians to be very careful about your social activities, and I continue to recommend that people wear masks in crowded indoor spaces. And if you will be in close contact with people at higher risk of severe disease, the very young, the very old, the immune compromised, it's critically important that you do your part and wear a mask when you're in contact with those people who are at higher risk. And please, if you are sick, even with mild cold or flu symptoms, do not go to social gatherings and events. I know they're important, but they're not absolutely critical and necessary, and stay home if you're unwell. If you do have to be out and about while sick, you absolutely need to wear a mask and do not visit an elderly person, someone who's immune compromised, or a young child. We all have the tools and resources to keep each other safe. Staying home if you're sick, even if with mild symptoms, is very important. If you need to cough or sneeze, do it in your sleeve. That helps minimize the spread of viruses around. Wash your hands often. Be mindful where you put your hands when you're out in public. Every time you put your hands on a surface or a railing or everything, you potentially get virus on your hands. And avoid touching your face if your hands haven't been recently washed. That's often how we infect ourselves. We get virus on our hands, and then we, without knowing it, touch our eye, put our hand to our face. And let's continue to focus on masking, especially where masking is most important and where it will make the most difference. And I'm going to repeat that. We recommend that people wear masks in crowded indoor places. If you are sick with cold or flu symptoms and cannot stay home, you need to wear a mask. If you have even very mild symptoms, but don't really feel unwell, maybe just a scratchy throat or a bit of runny nose, and you have to be out and about, wear a mask. And if you're recovering from a cold or flu-like illness and starting to feel better and starting to go out and about again, wear a mask for a few more days when you start to go out and about again. Nova Scotians have shown a tremendous amount of compassion over the past few pandemic years, and I have no doubt that we will collectively continue to do the right thing to keep each other safe. We are all healthiest when we keep each other and our community healthy. And before I close, I would like to say a special thank you to the hundreds and hundreds of healthcare workers in communities and healthcare facilities, hospitals, long-term care facilities, and the many other staff that are required to make sure those facilities run, who are working tremendously hard, and many of them will continue to have to work very, very hard over the coming weeks. Even though the rest of us may have time off, maybe enjoying holidays, our healthcare system has to keep running. So I want to give a very big thank you to all of those in the healthcare system who continue to be there to meet the needs for the rest of us. So have a safe and happy holiday season, and may each of you have the joy, hope, peace, and love of this time of year.
We'll move to the phones now for some questions. We'll start with Adam Cook with Telile Community Television. Adam?
Hi, Dr. Strang. Thank you. A quick question about the potential resurgence of COVID-19 in North America. We have obviously seen this activity happening in China, several African countries still struggling with it. Various officials, including your office, have speculated about the possibility of a new round of COVID in the new year. Where are we in terms of the science on that?
So I think we really don't know. We have to watch and wait. Everything we're seeing in terms of what we're really watching for, is there a new variant that arises that is substantively different in terms that it would not be well covered by current vaccines. There's been lots of new variants in the last few months. None of them have showed much of a difference. So it's certainly a possibility. We continue to watch our COVID numbers. They are part of our picture for sure, but they're not a major contributor, and we'll have to watch that carefully. There is the potential for an increase as we get into 2023. That's why it remains important that people get up to date and take advantage of getting a bivalent vaccine when they're able to, and all the other measures we're talking about, masking where appropriate, careful socialization, etc. Staying home if you're sick, those will prevent the spread of all respiratory viruses. So they're not just for COVID, not just for influenza. And even as we're moving out of influenza season, as in 2023, we'll have to see where we're at with COVID, and we're going to probably still have to follow those preventive measures for a while in 2023.
Follow-up, Adam?
Yes, Dr. Strang, you had mentioned earlier about the kindness that Nova Scotians had shown each other and have shown the most vulnerable populations during the heights of COVID-19 over the past couple of years. It seems that in some pockets the pendulum has swung the other way, and people are actually being openly criticized and even verbally attacked for wearing masks in public. I just wonder, what do you say to people who would level such criticisms at their fellow Nova Scotians at a time like this?
Well, please, don't judge. People have lots of reasons making their own decisions, so do what you feel that you need to do, follow public health advice, and be kind to one another. And it starts with kind. It starts doing what you can do to protect those around you. These are tough times, not just from a flu or COVID perspective. They're tough economically, all sorts of challenges. We need to continue to deal with tough situations by coming together as a community and looking after each other.
You'll hear more from Nova Scotia's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Robert Strang, later in Telile 24/7, as he provides answers to questions that were asked by other reporters who are on the teleconference call on December the 15th. But right now, let's shift our attention to the Port Hastings Rotary, and more specifically, to the roundabout project that's designed to replace that rotary, with the hopes of clearing up several traffic issues that have arisen in recent years. On December the 5th, at the Port Hastings Fire Hall, Inverness MLA and Deputy Premier Alan McMaster, who represents the area taking in the Port Hastings Rotary, as well as Nova Scotia Public Works officials, including those that helped design the roundabout proposal, addressed local residents and others who have concerns and thoughts about the roundabout proposal. What does the roundabout look like? How is it going to impact traffic going through to any of the exit and entrance points? And how will it clear up the traffic that builds up at the Canso Canal on several days? Well, we're going to give you a little bit of a taste of all of that, including commentary from the public information session that took place at the Port Hastings Fire Hall. But first, here's a little background. When the concept of a replacement for the Port Hastings Rotary first emerged a couple of years ago, the Transportation Minister at the time, Lloyd Hines, described the situation at the Canso Canal as being unworkable in terms of getting traffic safely to and from Cape Breton and avoiding the long lineups that often persisted when marine traffic went through the Canso Canal. According to Hines, the roundabout project was supposed to get underway late in 2021. However, while the project has had some preliminary construction taking place, it has remained largely idle during that time. That's because officials with the Department of Public Works, which is currently the department taking in transportation issues, required more time to redesign the actual look of the roundabout. So, according to Public Works officials on hand at the meeting on December the 5th, here's how the new roundabout is supposed to work. The proposed project includes a roundabout built near the location of the existing rotary and a new storage lane for vehicles approaching the Canso Causeway from Cape Breton. The project is projected to help large vehicle lineups that form when the Causeway swing bridge is opened. Entering the new roundabout will be like entering the existing rotary, but vehicles entering the roundabout have to yield to vehicles that are already in the circle. The access points to Port Hastings are being adjusted and updated to improve sight distance and safety when entering and exiting the community. And a new bypass lane will allow vehicles coming from Port Hawkesbury on Trunk 4 to proceed to Trunk 19 without entering the roundabout. This lane is separated by a concrete median to minimize disruptions and to allow the continuous flow of traffic during swing bridge operations. Vehicles moving in all other directions will need to enter the roundabout.
Port Hawkesbury is going to be able to get to Route 19 and up to 105. People coming from Route 19 are going to be able to get to Port Hawkesbury and up to the 105. There is a challenge with people coming down the 105 into the new roundabout in that people have to travel in the same lane that are going across the causeway as they're going anywhere else. So that is one route where there is difficulty in solving that traffic challenge when the swing bridge is open.
The new roundabout is also designed to improve safety by reducing vehicle speeds. It will also standardize operations to be consistent with other roundabouts around Nova Scotia.
We have opened 49 other roundabouts in this province, and we have not seen the need to intensify enforcement.
This is not like the other rounds.
I understand what you're telling me, but it really is. Once the signs go up, once the information is out there, take the diagrams home. If you find that you're concerned about what you're seeing and you have a concern about how to get from A to B, reach out. I put my email address on the form. You can reach out to me anytime. But the fact is that the way it's been developed, the way it's been designed, the way I've sat down and said, okay, how do I make this as simple as possible, is that everything that you're doing, you have one decision to make at a time. Am I going up 105 or am I going to Trunk 19? Am I going to Trunk 19 or am I going to Trunk 4? Am I going to Trunk 4 or am I going to 104? If you're making those simple decisions, it all becomes very clear and very clean. If you look at it from a whole, it's like eating an elephant, my man. You can't do it all in one sitting. You got to break it down to individual choices. And that's what we do. That's what I do as a designer. I pretend I'm a driver, or pretend I'm a walker, or pretend I'm a cyclist. How am I going to get through this from A to B? And I'm making individual, finite choices that I've got lots of time to make before I arrive at the decision point.
According to the Public Works officials on hand on December 5th at the Port Hastings Fire Hall, Highway 104 westbound from the roundabout to the swing bridge will be expanded to 2 lanes. The officials claim that this will allow for additional vehicle storage waiting to cross the causeway. The use of traffic signals on Highway 105 and on Route 4 will also be required during busy periods of swing bridge operation, ensuring the roundabout remains open to emergency vehicles and local traffic.
Here on Highway 105,
As you come down, we'll have traffic signals here as well. Once that point in the storage area, those 2 lanes gets filled up, the red light here is going to hold traffic as well. Something else we've heard about is advanced notification. Okay, you're going to hold traffic here, cars are going to start backing up. It's a pretty high-speed roadway coming into this, so we're also planning to introduce or include some advanced warning signs or signals or something like that. Our traffic engineering group are just embarking on exactly what that looks like now to give people advance notice that, okay, swing bridge is shut down, I gotta be prepared to slow down and stop.
Some local residents have suggested that if it's the traffic from the Canso Canal swing bridge that's the problem, then perhaps it's the swing bridge that needs to be replaced and not the Port Hastings Rotary. However, according to Inverness MLA and Deputy Premier Alan McMaster, who introduced the Port Hastings Fire Hall session on December the 5th that unveiled the new design for the Port Hastings roundabout, the concept of replacing the Canso Canal swing bridge isn't as simple as many people might think.
There is one thing that is not in here, and that is the reality of the swing bridge. And the swing bridge is something that, if we looked at replacing that, would cost probably hundreds of millions of dollars, depending on the option chosen. So, with the reality of the swing bridge comes the reality of traffic delays. And my hope, because I worked with the Department of Public Works, and I want to thank them for being here tonight and thank them for their patience. Because I never wanted anything to come before people here tonight that I didn't think people would be happy with. Now that's not to say everybody's going to be happy tonight with what they see, but I wanted at minimum to have some of the traffic issues addressed with this design. And that's meant it has taken more time for them to come up with because they've had to redesign it. It also means it's going to cost more money. But the way I look at it, this is a very important piece of infrastructure that's probably going to be here for the next 50 years. And if something happens with the swing bridge someday, great. But until then, let's make this structure work the best way it can.
Again, it's foolproofing this design as best as we can, knowing that I may never see the day where we replace the swing bridge and we're into $100, $200, $300 million.
With construction expected to begin in earnest on the new Port Hastings roundabout in the spring of 2023, and conclusion of that construction not expected until the end of 2024, there are going to be delays and disruptions along this particular stretch of southern Cape Breton Island. So, the senior highway design engineer for Nova Scotia's Public Works Department, Keith Boddy, is encouraging patience among local residents and visitors alike.
We've been working with our construction group, who are represented up here right now, to develop plans to model traffic during the construction phase and to ensure that we keep traffic flowing to the best of our ability. We have a number of tools at our disposal, including night works, limited closure times, spreading the contract out over a longer duration, which we've taken advantage of. We're actually doing work this winter that's going to be offline, that's going to potentially cause single lane closures and that type of thing. But we're doing it when traffic is at its lowest. We're making sure that we're not out there during Celtic colors trying to close a lane. We're trying to be smarter than that. So yes, it's absolutely a concern. It's something that we're trying to address.
In the meantime, both Inverness MLA Alan McMaster and the Public Works officials who are on hand for the December 5th meeting at the Port Hastings Fire Hall are hoping that initial concern and confusion amongst those looking at the new roundabout design plans will disappear once people are actually on the road making their way through each individual part of the new design.
Somebody said today, and I thought this was a great comment, because it looks complicated. Keep in mind, you're not navigating this with a helicopter. You're going to be going through it in your car, and you're only going to get one choice at a time as you're going around the structure.
We brought a piece of infrastructure that's been used the world over that we trust Nova Scotians can figure out. It's a yield sign. I sat in the living room of a 96-year-old woman in Cape Breton trying to explain to her how to use a roundabout, and she looked me right in the eye and she told me these words: "It's okay, bye. It's a yield sign. I'll figure it out." So if she can tell me that.
Our intention is to have a few advanced notifications of what each lane is meant for. In in the event somebody's being super aggressive or didn't see the signs and is sitting here trying to squeeze over because they realize, oh, I'm going to lose my opportunity. Certainly in this area, there should be enough room that you can work around them. Somebody's going to be hard over against the edge of that right lane with whatever remaining of that lane plus the paved shoulder. You should be able to still get around. Hopefully they learn the lesson then and then apply it better for the next time they're through the area. Worst case, you could continue on through, head up toward trunk 19 and then do a U-turn and wait in the queue on that end to get across the causeway if you've made a totally legitimate mistake on your wayfinding.
Given the push towards highway twinning through Antigonish County, now currently taking shape between Marshy Hope and the Canso Causeway, many people in attendance in Port Hastings were wondering if highway twinning could be part of a future roundabout proposal. Keith Boddy, the Nova Scotia Public Works Senior Highway Design Planner, had this answer for them.
If you only saw into my brain, I have the twinned, full-blown version of this superimposed in the background of this file on my computer in my office, and I'm not actually joking you at all. I've been working on this file for 17 years. 17 years. The first thing I designed was the full-blown twinned causeway super highway through Cape Breton with the grade separations and the flyovers and the ramps and all that stuff. And then I said, well, what can we afford today? Right? Because nobody's got $175 million for me to build what I want. We're going to build what we can afford today and what's going to improve things today. And that's how we evolve these projects to where we are. But your point is valid. The future is bright. We all look forward to a twin superhighway across Cape Breton.
In the end, as people left the packed fire hall in Port Hastings on the first Monday evening in December, Public Works officials and Inverness MLA Alan McMaster both expressed hope that initial confusion over the new roundabout design will lead in the end to a piece of infrastructure that can help Cape Breton grow and benefit both the community of Port Hastings and all those who travel through it.
The fact is, there is a community here in Port Hastings. The other fact is that there is a need for a major piece of highway infrastructure right beside the community. And that reality impacts what can happen here. And I think about the fire station here, I think about the church across from us, and I think about the museum down below us here, and the community itself. But that's something that must be recognized, is that there are sort of two, I don't know if I would say competing, but just two realities. That there is, it's difficult when you are trying to come up with a plan for a major piece of highway infrastructure that connects people going to Newfoundland and to the rest of the country, when it's right beside a community, to try to make it safe and try to limit access. People are coming to a world-class island here. We should have a world-class look. So step one is to come up with a design for this roundabout. But beyond that, then you get to look at the spaces around the roundabout. And how can those be made to look better?
Carrying an estimated price tag of $15 million, construction on the new Port Hastings roundabout is expected to get underway in the spring of 2023 and wrap up late in 2024, affecting a roadway that takes in close to 25,000 to 30,000 vehicles per day. In Port Hastings, for Telile 24/7, I'm Adam Cook. We've heard a lot about green hydrogen and green ammonia production, both here in the Strait area and across Nova Scotia in recent months. Everwind Fuels, now residing at the former New Star Terminals plant in Point Tupper, has launched an environmental assessment application to try to get approval from the provincial and federal governments to begin construction on a new green hydrogen development in 2023, with the hopes of wrapping it up by 2025 and getting the project online at that time. At the same time, Nova Scotia's provincial government has closed several loopholes and gaps in legislation that developed green hydrogen projects during the latest legislature session that took place over the past fall. However, not everybody is happy about these possibilities for the Strait area or for the province in general. As a matter of fact, members of the Ecology Action Centre have issued concerns about the safety and general usefulness of green hydrogen. So to get some clarification on this front, I decided to interview Brenna Walsh, who is the Energy Coordinator for the Ecology Action Centre. Here's our conversation about whether green hydrogen is all that it's cracked up to be. And now joining us from her home office in Dartmouth, we're pleased to welcome the Energy Coordinator for the Ecology Action Centre to talk about green hydrogen development in Nova Scotia, but also in the Strait of Canso. We're pleased to welcome Brenna Walsh to Telile 24/7. Brenna, thank you for making yourself available for us today.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me.
We want to begin by getting the Ecology Action Centre's general viewpoint on green hydrogen. But to start, can you give us a sense of when this would have arrived on your radar and the radar of your colleagues? What kind of trends have you been seeing that made you and the Ecology Action Centre think, well, we'd better look at this and make sure that we've got all our ducks in a row in terms of what exactly this means? So what kind of timeline do you think we're talking here?
We really started seeing this conversation start to progress really quickly around green hydrogen this summer when the Chancellor from Germany visited the region. So we hadn't heard too much conversation about it since then, especially in the context of Nova Scotia and Newfoundland. But since this summer, it's been lots of news related to hydrogen.
So what at first blush was the reaction that you and your colleagues had about this potential for renewable energy, mostly based in wind energy, but what sense did you get in terms of whether this was viable as a potential replacement for fossil fuels, or whether it might not be all that it's cracked up to be?
In terms of green hydrogen itself, there is a large hydrogen industry around the globe. A lot of hydrogen is used to make ammonia for fertilizer, and being able to transition some of those sources that make hydrogen to more renewable sources, just on the kind of global larger context, is great to see, and it will probably really be needed. However, we do worry that this focus on hydrogen using a lot of renewables, whether that's onshore or offshore wind in Nova Scotia, which will primarily be exported for use in other markets. We think a lot of it will go to Germany, as I mentioned before, is concerning because it can be a bit of a distractor in terms of the energy transition that we need to make here. There's only limited space, for example, for onshore wind development in Nova Scotia. There's definitely concerns around offshore development that we are still working out. And so really think that this might be a bit of a distraction from that work that needs to be done to transition our own grid to renewables.
As you're speaking about this, I'm wondering, do you have a sense that there could be more actual energy expended in the shipping of green hydrogen than in the actual production of green hydrogen? Is that a concern that you and your colleagues have?
One thing that we are concerned about is there's certainly, you could use the wind that's generated directly on the grid. And that's an efficient use of wind. It's something that we need in Nova Scotia. We only have, we have about 50% coal on our grid currently, and we really need to push those transitions to renewables to meet the province's goals, the federal goals of getting to 80% renewables on the grid by 2030, and 90%, a new provincial target that was set last week in the climate plan, by 2035. So we really need to be able to push those forward and use those direct sources of renewables on our own grid. There is losses in terms of converting that hydrogen energy to hydrogen, and then there's additional losses in terms of converting it to ammonia.
We're coming from an area where there is a major development that is currently undergoing the environmental assessment phase. Do you get a sense that there could be danger or hazards to any ecosystem or environment that currently exists in any part of Nova Scotia, including right here in the Strait of Canso?
So for any large scale development, whether that's the hydrogen plant or ammonia plant, which I believe is what the environmental assessment that was recently submitted refers to, or a large scale wind farm, we really are looking to see that there's good process in those developments to make sure that we don't repeat some of the mistakes that have continued in the past, happened in the past, continue those historical environmental destruction or environmental racism that has that has been seen from these harmful industrial practices that has sometimes resulted in past projects. So we have a couple of things that we really look for in these large projects. Renewables can be a really great thing for our region, but we want to make sure that they're done right when they are implemented. So thinking about consultation of communities, talking about siting with communities, whether there may be, potential sites that are close to a community, there might be one that's a little bit more favorable than the other. Thinking about benefits to First Nations, nearby communities again, whether if that's kind of an offshore, if there's offshore wind at play, thinking about other fishing communities or other marine spaces that might be affected. And then really within those environmental assessments, making sure that you include spatial planning and mapping, looking at important ecological features, species at risk, but also places of cultural significance to the area, and impact of waterways that these projects may have, which is something that I think these hydrogen developments may not have. They do have more of an impact on the local waterways than some other large projects like a simple wind farm.
Yeah. Now, the specific local project that we're referencing in our conversation is, of course, the proposal by Everwind Fuels, currently set up at the former New Star Terminals operation in Point Tupper, to set up a multi-million-dollar green hydrogen production facility with the hopes of construction beginning in 2023 and ending in 2025, with the project coming online at that point. From your perspective and that of your colleagues at the Ecology Action Centre, what kind of project do you think Everwind is putting forward, and do you have specific concerns about their development individually?
So I know that environmental assessment is quite a big document, so I haven't gotten time to look through it in detail, but really would want to see those same principles being applied for this specific project. So really thinking about consultation, where that's located, but also thinking about these local impacts of the project as well. And so, there are certainly benefits that could happen in Nova Scotia in small communities from these new industries like green hydrogen, but just making sure that those principles are really carefully looked at.
Now, I'm just curious, do you have any interest, or do your colleagues at the Ecology Action Centre have any interest in doing an on-the-ground investigation or any kind of site visit to Point Tupper or even to the site of Everwind Fuels? Is that something that could be workable for you and your colleagues in terms of your ongoing research on this particular project and on green hydrogen in general?
I don't know if that's something that we've thought about before, but just certainly learning more about different projects as well as the concerns in community is something that we want to continue to do as these projects evolve. How
confident are you, from a professional perspective, but also just from a personal perspective, in the environmental assessment process as it stands now? Do you feel that the proposal submitted by Everwind Fuels is going to get the scrutiny that it needs?
We have had some concerns in terms of the environmental assessment process that the province does put companies through, I guess you could say. In the past, we've seen some really interesting commitments in the new climate plan from the province to strengthen that process, considering different climate impacts, as well as Indigenous ways of thinking within that. And I think that there is certainly room to strengthen that, and we'd like to be able to participate in that in whatever consultative process or whatever, however that will continue to be developed in the coming years. So though that might not apply to this environmental assessment that Everwind has just submitted, I think that will probably get through this current process. We do really think that there is some promise in the fact that strengthening that environmental assessment and thinking about particular climate impacts as well as cumulative climate impacts, as was stated by the province within their new climate plan, should strengthen that process. So hopefully that will be able to impact future projects.
Brenna Walsh, you've referenced the Nova Scotia government's new climate plan a couple of times in this interview, and this comes at the end of a fall legislature session in which several amendments to existing legislation on green hydrogen were introduced to tighten up any gaps in the legislation and to accelerate the production of green hydrogen specifically outside of the auspices of Nova Scotia Power or of municipal governments that had been interested in doing it. What's your take on the province's charge forward in terms of green hydrogen production? Is this a concern to you and your colleagues that it seems to be of such a high provincial focus right now?
Yeah, so our first concern is one that I mentioned at the beginning of the interview, that it is a bit of a distraction from that directly getting those renewables that we know are proven, like wind and solar, on the grid. But the other thing that we've been really wondering about is there, as we said through this interview, there's been lots of talk about green hydrogen in the last few months in Nova Scotia. A lot of the big things we see in the media relate to these export plans. However, a lot of the legislation that you referenced in the last provincial sitting, does seem to speak to what can be kind of developed and used domestically in terms of hydrogen in Nova Scotia. And we'd really like to see some more clarity on what those potential uses that the government has in mind will be and how they will benefit Nova Scotians.
You have brought up the need to get off coal, and obviously the province has a target date for that. Point Tupper is an interesting anomaly in that it has this company looking to push forward on green hydrogen when at the same time there's still a coal-fired generating station for Nova Scotia Power Incorporated. And we're just wondering, do you look at communities like this and see a difficult balance, I guess is the best way we can describe it, between trying to make sure that coal is no longer part of the energy equation, but by the same token, going safely ahead with green hydrogen, wind energy, and other potential renewable energy sources?
Yeah, no, I think it's certainly a good point that we really need to see how the province is intending to move away from coal. There's, in addition to the commitments to 80% renewable by 2030, there's also a commitment to get off coal by 2030, but we haven't really seen a clear plan in terms of how that will happen and how the province intends to get us there. And so, as I mentioned, this Point Tupper is an interesting example because, it's a site of coal generation for the province that will need to be retired in the coming years. However, there's now something else coming in that though it is generating some renewable electricity, it won't be benefiting Nova Scotians. It won't be replacing that coal asset. And so it is an interesting balance in terms of how that will, you lose that piece of, the fuel source in Nova Scotia. And in some ways it's the replacement, it isn't really benefiting Nova Scotians. And so thinking about different ways to, integrate renewables into our system, I think is something that would be beneficial, certainly in the local context there, but also for all Nova Scotia. And so we are kind of disappointed to be seeing this again focus on use of renewables for green hydrogen that won't benefit Nova Scotians. That only has this export potential.
All right, we've covered a lot of ground in a short time, as I thought we might, and I've appreciated you giving me some time here. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add about all of this just before we wrapped up, Brenna?
No, I think that's about it. Just really thinking about, the large scale projects that we are developing in Nova Scotia, the benefits that can be had from renewables, but really making sure that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past, and so that we're doing strong consultation, careful siting of projects, and making sure they benefit the communities where they will be located.
Well, viewpoints such as yours and those of your colleagues at the Ecology Action Centre are critical to a discussion like this. So we really appreciate you giving us some time here. Brenna Walsh, thank you so much for joining me today on Telile 24/7.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Brenna Walsh is the Energy Coordinator for the Ecology Action Centre. We've been speaking to her via Zoom from her home office in Dartmouth. Stay tuned for more of Telile 24/7 in just a moment.
The next item on the agenda is an update on our communications plan. Information provided to Council on this in advance included a little bit of a background on the plan that we have right now on the website, which, as the CAO I think has confirmed, is still a draft format. It wasn't really ever adopted formally, and it is more of a statement of intentions rather than less of a concrete plan. And in 2021, I know we began work on a communications plan with the county because it didn't have those specific strategies and tactics. The work was halted in part because we felt that it would be, I guess, better completed after the strategic planning process, so we could get a feel for what residents were expecting in terms of communication. Now with the plan completed, with the strat plan completed, we thought this would be a good time to kind of dust off the plan from 2021. The goal being that we create a plan that is achievable and results in consistent and predictable methods of communications that residents can rely upon, which I think we do a lot of now, but it's really to say what we do as well as to do what we say. So it's to kind of capture it in a way that it leaves a legacy document and a roadmap for councillors who may be different than us in the future, or staff who may be different than the current staff in the future, so that we're being consistent regardless of who's sitting at the table. So I guess at this point, I'd open for discussion. I did provide the draft that had been worked on with the Cape Breton Partnership. Carly Appleton had been working on that. And just looking for, I guess, councillors' thoughts on whether or not we should reach out to them to, let's, complete the process and get this thing over the finish line. So, folks be open to that? Yeah, I'm seeing some nodding heads.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I guess the motion I would be looking for is to ask staff to reach out to the Cape Breton Partnership for support in revising the June 4th, 2021 draft strategic communications plan. Thank you, Councillor Sean Sampson.
Can you repeat that again?
To ask staff to reach out to the Cape Breton Partnership for support in revising the June 4th, 2021 draft strategic.
Good. I didn't hear all the parts. Sorry.
Okay. So,
I will second that.
Okay, so it's been moved by Councillor Sean Sampson and seconded by Councillor Melanie Sampson. Is there any further discussion on that item?
I can say on behalf of Shelley and I, we're quite happy that to be part of this now. Where we missed the first part of this will, because it's going to involve the two of us an awful lot. So helping to finish this off will be at a good framework for us as we go forward. So we can do the assigning just as we're going through it to make sure that we have people assigned to the task. So it'll be a good process for us to go through.
I agree.
Okay. Any further discussion? All right, thank you for those comments, Troy. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried.
As promised, here is more of the commentary from Dr. Robert Strang, Nova Scotia's Chief Medical Officer of Health, during his December 15th update on the state of respiratory virus treatment here in Nova Scotia. This time around, he's going to be addressing other media representatives that were in the room and on the phone during the December 15th media availability. And we'll kick things off with Dr. Strang's update on how things are going in terms of Nova Scotians getting properly vaccinated against respiratory viruses, including influenza and COVID-19.
We're still far, I think we've improved somewhat over the last week or so, but we're still far from where we need to be. I think it's in the range of still around slightly under 20% for those 20 years of age and under. We're doing better with seniors, people 65 and above living in community. They're not at where we'd like them to be, the minimum 80%, but they're much closer. I think they're in the range of 65-70%. Our seniors in long-term care facilities are well vaccinated, but we certainly with youth and young children, both with influenza and COVID vaccine, we're far from where we need to be in terms of vaccine uptake.
Is there fatigue about vaccinations after 2 years of COVID?
I wish I had. I'm not the only one in public health. I wish we had really strong answers. Historically, the uptake of flu vaccine in young children has not been very high. I just think, and also I think that 2 years of pandemic and a COVID vaccines, for whatever reason, people have just too many people have kind of said we want to move past it and are ignoring that. Certainly the misinformation in social media and online is part of this, and that's a significant issue that collectively as a society we need to look at. But we need to examine where, not just for these vaccines, for childhood vaccines as well. We need to take a critical look at where we're at today with our vaccine uptake and what we need to do. And part of it is really engaging communities and talking to people. Why is it? We've done a very good job in Nova Scotia of making vaccines available and accessible, even taking vaccines through mobile vans and to marginalized populations, those things. But we still have far too many who are choosing not to get vaccinated.
Partly because, at least public perception in previous years has been that the focus has been on the older population. We've seen the problems with the older population. We may not associate it as much with the younger people. Is that an accurate assessment?
That may be, but over the last decade, as we've got more information, we've been much stronger in our message that it's the very young, pregnant women, and as part of that, are also at a much higher risk. But it's not translating through to this point in terms of understanding and taking action around flu vaccine.
The flu case is affecting the situation in our ERs right now. I'm sure you've seen the stories from earlier this week about the concern from officials within the system. There's many factors at play there, but how much is flu and other respiratory diseases playing into this right now?
I think there is a significant part. We certainly have a system that, for lots of other long-standing regions, is very stretched, but then you add on the surge of not just influenza, but RSV. You certainly put lots of pressure with young kids on our kind of pediatric admissions. But now we're getting lots and lots of people sick with flu-like illness, whether they actually have influenza or some other virus. That is creating a lot of pressure on our emergency departments at this point in time. I know the system's working really hard to try to get other urgent care centers, even mobile vans and things stood up, getting primary care to absorb this. But there's the challenge of an already stressed system having to deal with now a surge of people. Most of them will not end up in hospital, but they're looking for some kind of health care. And often right now, they end up in the emergency department.
Expand on that? Sorry, can you expand on that? Yeah, like the pressure in hospitals, what is it? Like, what do people need to know about how bad things are?
Well, our hospitals are full. And even a small increase in the number of people needing hospitalization because of respiratory virus infection puts strain on an already full hospital system. And the same with our emergency departments. The emergency departments are already full. Many people don't have access to other forms of primary care, so they end up in the emergency department. They may not have a true emergency, but they're looking for health care from some format. So our system is working extremely hard to deal with these people as best it can. That's why I push the message out. We all need to take this seriously and do whatever we can to keep ourselves as healthy as possible, minimize the chance that we're the ones spreading a virus around and contributing to taking some of the pressure off the healthcare system.
Strang, you said 8 to 10 weeks is the typical flu season. Is that what you're seeing in other jurisdictions? Are you seeing shorter, more condensed flu seasons that are more aggressive, more, stronger, more aggressive?
We're seeing, in the southern hemisphere, they had about a 2-month, Australia had about a 2-month flu season, so they are in that normal range. It's too early yet, but we usually get flu in Canada moves from west to east, so we're a few weeks behind Western Canada. Last week I was on a call and the chief MOHs were talking about starting to see some signs that their influenza was stabilizing. We're seeing perhaps some very early indications of that, so we have to be very careful that we need to. You only know that for sure once you're through it, and you can look back a bit. So the hope is that maybe we're halfway through, but regardless of where we're at, we know we're going to have a lot of influenza activity circulating around in the next few weeks when there's peak social activity. So we all need to do what we can do to make sure, as we socialize, doing it very carefully, and we're not contributing to spreading the virus around.
Low uptake of vaccinations. Are we seeing vaccines reaching and passing their best before date? Like, are we losing vaccines?
No, we have vaccines have quite robust expiry dates. We work really hard around to minimize wastage. We have a good system in Nova Scotia with working with pharmacies and online appointments, so we can very carefully match vaccine once it leaves our central bio depot and goes out into the regions. It's always temperature controlled, but then we match very carefully the amount of vaccine that's out into individual pharmacies with the appointments. So wastage is not a substantive issue.
School districts have their students going back for, I think, 2 days next week. Any thought on encouraging the school boards to sort of shut things down today and forget those 2 days next week that they're essentially...
We haven't had a conversation with that would be an operational decision of education. There's no public health reason to shut schools down early.
Compare this season to past seasons in terms of severity?
It's in some ways we can, in some ways, so let me answer that. What we know now, because we're only partway through the season, what we know now that certainly we've had the rate of increase as the flu season started was much more rapid. It's more acute because the number, especially on the pediatric side, the overall number of kids who have been sick with RSV and influenza over a very short period of time has created a lot of pressures on our hospitals.
There's been concerns about whether the vaccine is closely matched the flu that's developing that year. How is this year's vaccine matched?
Everything we're seeing, and we have a circulating H3N2 strain, and there's a very good match of what's circulating versus the H3N2 strain that is in the vaccine.
I had asked Dr. Linkless during your last conference, and he said at that time he wasn't aware of any deaths among children. Has that changed? Have children died?
No. We have had no reported pediatric deaths from respiratory viruses this year.
Following up on that, can you speak to what are, if there are any, long-term effects for children who get hospitalized, possibly in ICU for respiratory illnesses? Does that change their health outlook for the rest of their lives?
I'm not the best to answer that. Most recover well, but you'd have to really ask one of the intensivist pediatricians about what are the potential consequences of being on a ventilator and those things. It's just not an area that I have enough knowledge on to want to speculate about.
Well, that finishes today's conference.
Thank you all. Merry Christmas, everybody. Stay safe.
Well, any of you who made it through the big snowstorm that we had just a week ago knows full well that the rough weather is coming here and it's coming to stay. And that's going to impact how a lot of people make it around their communities. Well, the village of St. Peters has an idea to try to make sure that sidewalks are clear for those making their way around the community during the winter. That item came up to Richmond Municipal Council's table during their latest Committee of the Whole meeting in Arichat. And here is how Richmond councillors responded.
At this time, they're seeking approval for a loan guarantee in the amount of $56,407.50 for the purpose of purchasing a new Kubota cab tractor for the sidewalks. So, as per the MGA, we would need to approve that guarantee here at this council. So, I'd be looking for a motion from council to approve the attached draft guarantee. I believe it was in the package.
It was.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Good. All right.
I'll make that motion.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Mike Digdon. Could I have a seconder on that, please?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Warden. Are you ready?
Here we go.
There we go. Whereas the Village of St. Peters is a village situated within the municipality of the County of Richmond, whereas the Village of St. Peters has, with the approval of the electors of the village, determined to borrow the aggregate principal amount of $56,407.50 for the purpose of purchasing a sidewalk tractor, whereas the Village of St. Peters has requested that the municipality guarantee said borrowing, and whereas Section 89 of the Municipal Government Act provides that a municipality may guarantee a loan for a village, and whereas Section 88(3) of the Municipal Government Act provides that no guarantee of a borrowing by a municipality shall have effect unless the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing has approved of the proposed borrowing or debenture of the proposed guarantee. Be it therefore resolved that the municipality of the County of Richmond does hereby approve the borrowing by the Village of St. Peters the aggregate principal amount of $56,407.50 for the purposes set out above. That's subject to the approval of the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. The municipality does unconditionally guarantee repayment of the principal and interest of the borrowing so made, and that upon the issue of the debentures, the mayor and clerk of the municipality, the warden and clerk of the municipality, do sign the guarantee attached to each of the debentures and affix thereto the corporate seal of the municipality. Is there any further discussion on that resolution? Okay, so all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? The motion is carried. Thank you, everyone.
But along with the big snowfall that comes with December and the onset of winter, there's also a lot of community gathering that takes place as we head into Christmas. And because this is the final episode of Telile 24/7 before Christmas officially arrives, we thought it might be a nice idea to visit with our Richmond Municipal Councillors and get their thoughts about Christmas community events that have been taking place all the way around the county. Let's kick things off by hearing from Richmond Warden and District 4 Councillor Amanda Mumbercat.
I also wanted to say a huge congratulations to the folks who have been putting on Christmas events so far in the county. It's been busy with lots going on. So just first, I guess, to the extended family of the Village on the Canal Association, who put together the 25th Annual Festival of Trees, which saw 32 trees set up in the Lions Hall in St. Peter's this year, which was amazing. And then the Christmas in the Village event, which was a partnership with the Village Commission, including a thank you for the big giant tree from River Roots. If you haven't seen it, it's sitting pretty in the Village Square right now. The pretend wrapping paper is sort of coming off one of the blocks, so we'll have to repair that. But it looks great there right now. Truly a community effort because it's a big monster of a tree. Also wanted to thank the team who put together the recent Christmas parade and holiday wonderland experience in Lordways. I don't know, Deputy Warden, I didn't get a chance to go down on Saturday evening, but it looked spectacular from the photos. Just huge congratulations to the volunteers in your community there that just pulled off an amazing event, and I'm sure there are others in other communities. I don't know if anybody would like to speak up about that. Some's coming up, but over to you, Councillor Sampson.
Just wanted to congratulate the Louisdale Volunteer Fire Department and their Ladies Auxiliary for a very successful food bank drive on Saturday, I think, of this weekend. They raised over $2,000, plus they got lots of food for the food bank, so that's great. Tonight, the Louisdale Lions Club is hosting their tree lighting and Jingle Bell Walk, so unfortunately couldn't make it to that because here we are. The weather kind of held that off last week, and just wanted to remind people that the tree lighting at the Straight Richmond Hospital will be held next Monday night at 6 o'clock, so if you're able to join, we're going to miss that too because we'll be here, but certainly hope that lots of folks come out to that. So great. Again, big congratulations to all those folks.
Thank you, Councillor Melanie. Any other comments from anyone?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, myself, like Councillor Melanie said, Almadam Volunteer Fire Department, with their food bank, raised, I think, over 22 hours of cash and a couple truckloads of food. So congratulations to them and great work on their part. Just want to congratulate and acknowledge everybody involved in Noel Almadam, which was last night. Ever since COVID struck us, Noel Almadam was taken from the forge and then just like have a drive-by, more or less, where the kids just stay in their vehicles and it's nice and warm and they're in their car seats, and so they come up one side of this driveway and around to the school and back down to her side. And so it's a great event, and I just want to acknowledge everybody involved in that situation. And also, again, the Almadam Volunteer Fire Department. There was some events here last night, one at the Clarestone and one at the New Horizon Senior. So, of course, there were some traffic jams, and but the fire department took care of that. There was only one-way traffic coming, so people were able to get to those events. So just want to thank everybody involved there.
Great.
And there was also a musical at the Friends of St. John at the Anglican Church. So there was a musical event there. So, and a festival of trees at Ecology Action Centre. So congratulations.
So
to
much
everybody.
going on.
It's
You have to be
great time of year, and community spirit and community volunteer. It's great to see.
Yeah, it's great to see everybody getting back out as well. You know, it was a couple of long years. So.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw in a short, for anybody watching that I had myself and Councillor Sampson, we had the honor of standing at the bottom by the tree, passing out treats to all the kids, but Councillor Sampson wanted to traumatize a few of the kids, so when they got there, he said, "We're collecting all the treats that you got all the way around." So the kids were like, some of the kids were like, "No."
Shut the window, Mom.
There was a few that were willing to give back all the treats, so it was kind of nice to see. But.
Yeah, it was funny, the first kid. I said, "We're just collecting stockings full of treats." I said, "You don't have any, do you?" And they're like, So yeah, it was fun. Yeah,
That's great.
And there you have it. Thank you for joining us for this week's edition of Telile 24/7. I'd also like to thank my interview guest this week from the Ecology Action Centre, Brenna Walsh, and a big thank you to my Telile colleagues, Callen Cowan, Nick Boudreau, and Becky Bourinot, for filming and formatting the footage from Richmond Municipal Council's Committee of the Whole meeting on December 12th. If you have any thoughts or comments about what you've seen over the past hour on Telile 24/7, or you'd just like to make suggestions for future shows, I'd love to hear them. You can contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863, and you can reach me by email using the address adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. You can also contact Telile directly. The station phone number in Arichat is 902-226-1928, and the best email address to use is telile@telile.tv. Don't forget to follow Telile on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and now TikTok. And our YouTube channel features every single episode of Telile 24/7, including this one, as well as our sister program, Roundtable, and all kinds of new and classic programming from Telile Community Television, including a lot of classic Christmas programming that you'll enjoy during the holiday season. For now, I'm Adam Cook. Thank you for joining me on Telile 24/7 this week and all through 2022. I wish you the very best for the Christmas season and beyond, and I look forward to seeing you with brand new episodes of Telile 24/7 very soon. Bye for now.